Good morning. Thanks for joining us. It is Memorial Day weekend, the time when hopefully we all pause to honor and recognize the sacrifice of the men and women who died in military service to our country. And given how many of those lives were lost in wars in the European theater in the last century, it's good timing for us to talk with a local author, James, a.k.a. James Kirchick, a Boston area native who spent much of this decade writing and reporting on the politics and political culture of Europe. He's published a must-read new book, The End of Europe, Dictators, Demagogues, and the Coming Dark Age, out now, published by Yale University Press. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. The title sounds like something that could have been written in the 1920s during the rise of Hitler. Are things really that bad?
Well, they're not as bad as that, but they're pretty bad. I mean, if you look at the everything from the economic situation, which has been stagnant for several years, to the Russian aggression in Eastern Europe and the meddling in European politics, to the return of anti-Semitism, Islamic terrorism, political populism and extremism, it's a very worrying picture.
Well, the Europeans for some time have reveled in the notion that they are the avatar of multiculturalism. They're the place that can make it work. You write in your book that that is, quote, largely a delusion. Why?
Well, it hasn't been working. I mean, if you look at the number of young Muslim men going to Syria to fight in the Islamic State and then returning and carrying out terrorist attacks, it's been very high. And if you look at the number of Jews who are leaving France on a yearly basis because of the anti-Semitism that they have to endure, it's getting larger every year. And so I think that there needs to be a new model of civic participation and citizenship so that they can reduce these tensions.
We're not without our own issues in this country, but certainly the Muslim American community is a success story of assimilation. Why? What's the difference between here and there?
There's lots of differences. I mean, one is just America is a melting pot, and the idea of citizenship is creedal. If you agree with the Constitution, you become an American citizen. Where in Europe, these notions of who really is a Frenchman or who really is a German, it still is tied in with this notion of blood and soil, and that makes it different, makes it harder to assimilate people. We also get a different batch of immigrants from around the world, whereas in Europe, if you look at the refugee crisis, it's over 1 million people coming in 1 year, many of whom are not well educated, they're not doctors, they're not engineers. So you're getting a different pool of people who are coming as well. And so I think it's these two factors that play a large role. And also I should add that immigrants in the United States, they actually work at higher labor participation rates than native-born Americans do, whereas in Europe, largely in part because of these very generous social welfare states who actually have higher unemployment rates among immigrants than you do the native-born.
Well, before we take our break here, let's go back to how I opened this segment here, talking about the 1920s. I mean, it's been only 70 years since the Holocaust. Could there be another one? I mean, do the same circumstances, you're describing anti-Semitism, ethnic rivalries and bitterness, do those same circumstances exist?
I don't see the same circumstances resulting in another catastrophe like World War II, largely because we have institutions now that we didn't have in the interwar period, mainly the European Union and NATO. And these didn't exist. These institutions are coming under assault, both from within and without. But I think we, as Americans, we built these institutions after World War II with the Marshall Plan and with NATO. We created NATO, and that's why I think it's so important that the United States remain engaged in Europe in supporting European integration and NATO.
Well, let's talk more about the U.S.-Europe relationship and what our policy should be toward Europe when we continue our conversation with James Kirchick, author of The End of Europe, in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Our guest on this Memorial Day weekend is James Kirchick, author of The End of Europe, Dictators, Demagogues, and the Coming Dark Age. And Jamie, our new president has a distinctly different take on some of the world's dictators and Europe's dictators. Of course, the whole Trump-Putin relationship is the subject of much speculation. He was quick to congratulate the Turkish dictator Erdogan after his tainted victory in a recent referendum there. He and his press secretary even had some what sounded like praise for Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea. What an impressive achievement he's done over there. What are the implications of that going forward in terms of the U.S.-European relationship? We've already seen Trump backtrack on his disparagement of NATO.
Right. Well, he also endorsed Marine Le Pen, the far-right presidential candidate in France, which was strange and sort of disturbing. I think it is troublesome that, usually the American president is supposed to stand for freedom and democracy, and every president from Harry Truman really through Barack Obama supported European integration, and they supported NATO resolutely. And now we have a president who, openly endorsed Brexit and has called for more Brexits, and he's expressed real ambivalence about the European Union, whether or not it should continue to exist even. And throughout the campaign, he called NATO obsolete. And even his remarks recently, it doesn't seem to me like he really fundamentally understands the purpose of NATO. It's very transactional.
Well, what are the implications of that if that continues?
Well, look, NATO has a collective defense clause, Article 5, which says that an attack on one member is an attack on all. And the only time it was invoked was after 9/11, when we were attacked, and all of our European allies came with us into Afghanistan. President Trump, during the campaign, he said that the United States would condition its support for Article 5 based upon whether certain members of the alliance pay enough money. So this sends a really ambiguous message to the Russians. I mean, look, the reason why we didn't have World War III in Europe was because the Russians feared NATO, and they understood that if they crossed that line, then there could be really disastrous consequences. And now to have an American president who's expressing ambiguity about our commitments to European security is a very dangerous thing.
Well, what about the strength of the European commitment to us?
Right. Well, absolutely. I mean, if there's one small point that President Trump is right on, it's that European nations do need to pay more for their own defense. And this is something that every American president, really going back to Eisenhower, has complained about. And I think if there's a silver lining to these remarks that Donald Trump has been making over the past year and a half, it's that Europeans are waking up and realizing we can't take for granted the American military's support for our security.
Jamie, we just scratched the surface. Thank you for coming by. Good luck with your book. I hope everyone reads it.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate having you here. Again, the title, The End of Europe. The author, James Kirchick. Support our local authors. This book is a great read. Thanks very much. Now I'm going to send it back over to my colleagues for more WBZ News.